With Dragon Ball Sparking Zero being a thing in 2024, it marks the return of Budokai Tenkaichi and celebrates this beloved series of games. But before we move on to this much anticipated title, today we're going to be diving into a legendary showdown between two iconic Dragon Ball games, both of which will have their legacy being continued by the release of Sparking Zero. That being Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3 and Dragon Ball Raging Blast 2. Which one reigns supreme? Let's find out. Make sure that you hit that thumbs up button for me. By liking this video, you help support the channel and help this video reach more people, and also leave a comment on which game you prefer or enjoy more. But stay tuned until the end because I might just change your mind when this is over with. And also, if there's anything that you feel like I didn't mention or I didn't elaborate on, please feel free to comment. I'd like to read them all. But now let's jump into this deep dive. First up, let's introduce our contenders. Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3, released in 2007, often hailed as the GOAT and the holy grail of Dragon Ball games. The definitive game for anyone in the 2000s. Second, we have Dragon Ball Raging Blast 2, released in 2010. Helped bring the Budokai Tenkaichi style to a new decade with a name that spins off into its own thing, and it offered improved graphics and gameplay mechanics. But does it live up to its predecessors? Let's find out. Now, this is a clash of generations, and as someone who played through both games extensively in my lifetime, experienced both generations and loves both games, I'm gonna do my best to do a fair comparisons of various aspects of both games, and then we're gonna find out which game is actually better. Let's start with the graphics and visuals now. Budokai Tenkaichi 3 is a good looking game for its time. Despite being on older hardware, it still impresses with its vibrant colors and faithful character design. The cel-shaded graphics give it a nice timeless look, and I think that the animations are really good at recreating moves and fighting styles from the anime. The characters feel a lot more comic book or manga like in the way that they are drawn and animated, which I do really appreciate. However, Raging Blast 2 has the edge here, and it takes advantage of the more powerful hardware of the PS3 and Xbox 360. Character models are more detailed and the special effects are more explosive. Certain characters have a distinctive glow, especially when powering up, and most of them still look good by today's standards. The textures can be a bit polarizing, but I quite like it. In terms of the animations, when it comes to movement and combat, the animations are very similar to Budokai Tenkaichi 3, with some being ripped right from there, but it just looks better here and it's built upon more. So Raging Blast 2 wins in terms of graphics and visuals, but does graphics mean a better game though? We shall see. Now let's talk about the gameplay. Both games aren't that different from each other in terms of how they play, and a lot of the combos are the same button format, but there are a few differences in the control scheme. Like for example, if you want to do super moves in BT3, you gotta press L2 and triangle, or L2 up and triangle, and then L2 down and triangle for your ultimate. Meanwhile, in Raging Blast, it takes a more simple approach where you utilize the right analog for super moves and simply move it in a different direction to execute a different move. To do your ultimate, you simply click the analog in. Just like how I hope you click that like button and subscribe, by the way. And also, in Raging Blast 2, it allows you to unlock and customize special moves fully, so you can change stuff up to suit you and replace the things that you don't want, you know. BT3 on the other hand will keep it simple with 2 special move attacks and 2 power-up skills. This can get a bit old after a while. Budokai Tenkaichi 3 is known for its fast-paced 3D arena style battles. The controls are intuitive and the combat feels very fluid. Raging Blast 2, however, introduces the Raging Soul mechanic, which adds a layer of strategy to fights. Combat is more refined, but some people feel like it lacks the chaotic fun of Budokai Tenkaichi 3. After playing both recently though, I definitely gravitated more towards Raging Blast 2. Combat feels a lot better and more slick. And because of this and everything mentioned above, Raging Blast 2 wins the gameplay and mechanic battle because they are both so similar, and Raging Blast adds a bit more in terms of mechanics, simplicity and customization. We talked about the gameplay, now let's talk about the game modes. Budokai Tenkaichi 3 has a story mode that lets you play through various different fights from Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, the Dragon Ball Z movies and Dragon Ball GT with some what if scenarios as well. It also has Ultimate Battle, which lets you do a cool simulation where you choose your fighter and you train, eat, rest and sleep and stuff like that before a big fight. So there are some RPG elements in it. And then there's also Mission 100, which lets you play various different battles against all sorts of different opponents and teams with different themes attached to them. And you can even read your Budokai Tenkaichi and Budokai Tenkaichi 2 disc for even more content. Then we get the Dragon World Tour, which lets you play through various different tournaments, all with their own separate set of rules, like the Cell Games, the World Tournament, Intergalactic Tournament, other World Tournament, and of course, the most well-known of the bunch, the Yamcha Games. And then we have the character reference, which allows you to read up on the characters and their backgrounds, and view their models with the different costumes as well. And you listen to their dialogue, samples of their dialogue, listen to how they sound and all that. But the best part of all is Chi-Chi's commentary.
Even at his age, he's still acting like a punk.
And then we get our, standard training modes and tutorials and battles, which you can choose between, singles and team battles, and you can play against your friend or the computer. You can customize your characters as well with items and, get busy. Now with Raging Blast 2, there's your standard normal and team battle modes, as well as the customization, and you have your training and tutorials also. Outside of that, we have the two main single player modes of the game. Unfortunately, this game does not have a story mode. Instead, we are blessed and cursed with Galaxy mode, which is kind of like story mode, and it lets you unlock different characters and odd pieces from the anime to view in your gallery, which I think is a nice touch. But Galaxy mode doesn't really have any source. It's just a bunch of fights with a bunch of different handicaps and challenges. It'll keep you busy, but it gets very repetitive and annoying after a while. The other major single player mode is Battle Zone, which basically acts as a combat tower. Defeat all the enemies, complete the tower, and move on to the next. There's not much to tell there. There's not much to explain there. Outside of that, we have online mode, which is probably where most players spend their time. Online gaming hit a big boom in the 2010s, so I'd say that this game was no exception. I enjoyed playing online a lot in this game. Then we have our museum, which lets us view collected moments from the anime, and then there's even an actual anime OVA movie to watch, which I found very surprising. It was actually a decent plot too, about the Tuffles getting revenge on the Saiyans, and if you watch this movie, you will unlock the main villain from that movie, and his name is Hachiyak. So I thought that was a cool idea, a cool way to unlock a new character. And then we have our encyclopedia, where we read up on characters and hear dialogue samples, but unfortunately we can't view the models, and even more unfortunate is that there is no commentary from Chi-Chi.
Jeez, when it comes to Goku, he won't work at all. Thanks to that, we're extremely poor.
Needless to say, Budokai Tenkaichi 3 pummels Raging Blast 2 in this aspect. There's a whole lot more stuff to do, especially for single player, which is how majority of us spend our playtime in games. I can see people preferring Raging Blast 2 just for the online and offline multiplayer being more enjoyable, but Tenkaichi 3 just has a lot more stuff to keep you busy and entertained. And also it has Chi-Chi's commentary, so you can't argue. Now, let's talk about the roster. For this one, I'm gonna keep it short and simple. Raging Blast 2 focuses just on Dragon Ball Z, whereas Budokai Tenkaichi 3 has characters from Dragon Ball Z, and GT. It has more characters and variations and a lot more representation from everything available at the time. Except Hachiyak, Raging Blast 2 got that over them. And also, I appreciate Raging Blast 2 for including what-if characters like Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta and Super Saiyan 3 Broly. That caught me off guard. But needless to say though, I was disappointed when I found out that Super Saiyan 4 wasn't in the game. With BT3 having over 160 characters, whereas RB2 has less than 100, Tenkaichi 3 easily wins this one. Now, let's talk about the community and legacy of these games. As I mentioned at the top of the video, Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3 has unparalleled popularity and a dedicated fan base that still plays the game to this day, with lots of wacky and very well made mods keeping the game alive, and well, even characters from Dragon Ball Super in the mix. And I haven't even played the Budokai Tenkaichi 4 mod, but I've seen it and it honestly looks incredible. And then you get those silly mods like John Cena or CJ and Big Smoke, or even Thomas the Tank Engine. Those ones kept me up at night, during the lockdown when I couldn't sleep. I would just go on YouTube and just, watch those, binge watch them. And, they never failed to make me laugh. The fans really refused to let this game die. Raging Blast 2, on the other hand, is like the forgotten son of the Budokai Tenkaichi series. Even Raging Blast 1 gets more love than this game. And that's not even discussing how people view the Raging Blast games differently, solely because they have a different name, when it literally looks, plays and feels like Budokai Tenkaichi. It's quite unfortunate. This game still has its loyal fans though, and I really admire them for giving this game the love that it deserves. Some people might argue that Budokai Tenkaichi 3 is overrated, but I don't think it's crazy to say that Raging Blast 2 is underrated. As for which game wins though, while both games have pros and cons, and depending on what you like and your preference, I would feel bad for stringing you along without naming a winner. So based on all the information that I've gathered for you and given you throughout this video, the winner of this match is Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3. It's just the more well-rounded and complete game. Raging Blast 2 may excel in some places, but it also lacks in others, which is where it falls short. I enjoyed playing both games though, in my childhood and in my teens. I put hundreds of hours into both, and I've made lots of memories with friends and family playing them. Raging Blast and its online multiplayer was a big draw, but the legacy of Budokai Tenkaichi 3 cannot be matched. And whether you're a super survivor or you have Raging Soul, you can rest well knowing that both games will have their legacy continued with Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, and they will have their place in history. And if you want to know how these two games led to the creation of Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, you can click the video on the left, or you can click the video on the right where I explain why Dragon Ball Sparking Zero is way more important than you think. I'll see you there. Thank you for watching.